I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Michael Mercer's fingers paused over the keyboard. The code on his screen blurred as his attention drifted to the framed photo on his desk. Him and Lainey on their honeymoon in Cancun, both smiling. 5 years ago. He couldn't remember the last time they'd smiled at each other like that. The office hummed around him, other engineers deep in their own worlds of programming and systems architecture. Michael preferred it this way. Minimal interaction, maximum focus. He checked his watch, 4:47 p.m. 13 minutes until he could reasonably leave without drawing attention. "Hey, Mercer." Trevor from accounting leaned against his cubicle wall. The wife called. Said something about needing the credit card information for an emergency purchase. Michael's jaw tightened slightly imperceptibly to anyone who didn't know to look for it. "Thanks," he said, voice even. "Another surprise expense." He reached for his phone, noticed 3 missed calls from Lainey as he drove home. His mind cataloged the month's unexpected costs. Lainey's new yoga certification, $2,400. The living room furniture she'd replaced without discussion, $3,700. And now, whatever today's emergency was. The numbers aligned in his head like lines of code, a pattern forming. Their suburban home appeared before him, modest by Minneapolis standards, but well kept. The lawn trimmed to exactly 2 inches. The garden beds Michael tended each weekend, geometrically precise. Order amid chaos, he found Lainey in their bedroom, surrounded by shopping bags. The closet door stood open, stuffed with clothes still bearing tags. "Oh, hey, babe." She bounced up, kissing his cheek, her yoga-toned body draped in what appeared to be a new outfit. "You didn't call me back." "I was working." He set his laptop bag down carefully. "What was the emergency?" "There was this pop-up boutique at the studio today. Designer stuff at crazy discounts." She pulled out a leather jacket. "This was 70% off. I couldn't pass it up. 70% off what original price." His voice remained neutral, a skill learned at his father's dinner table decades ago. That Lainey's smile faltered slightly. "Does it matter?" It was a steal. She turned to the mirror, admiring herself. The girls at the studio were so jealous. Michael watched her, mind categorizing. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Power isn't in reaction, son. It's in restraint. Let them think you're weak. Watch. Wait. Plan." "I transferred money from savings again," she said, halfway into the closet. "Just a little." The credit card was maxed. She tossed the words over her shoulder as if discussing the weather. "I see." Michael loosened his tie. "What time is your class tonight?" 7. "Why? Do you want to come?" Her voice held no actual hope that he would. "No, just wondering how much time we have before dinner." Later, as they ate the meal he'd prepared, Michael observed her. The way she checked her phone every few minutes. The slight flush when certain messages arrived. The designer watch he didn't recognize on her wrist. "We have brunch with my family on Sunday," she mentioned between bites. "Mom's doing her famous Bloody Marys." "I'll be there," he promised, his mind already tabulating another expense. Another afternoon of subtle degradation. Another test of his restraint. That night, as Lainey slept beside him, Michael stared at the ceiling. His father had controlled through fear and fists. Michael had sworn never to become him. But as he reviewed the patterns, the missing money, the casual disrespect, the isolation from his few friends, he wondered if his opposite approach had left him equally trapped. He turned to study Lainey's sleeping face. Beautiful, careless, content in the belief that his silence meant surrender. He didn't. Sunday arrived with perfect weather and Michael's growing sense of dread. Francine's lakeside home gleamed white against the blue Minnesota sky, its manicured lawn rolling down to the water where Rick's boat bobbed gently at the private dock. "Remember to compliment Mom on her new highlights," Lainey instructed as they pulled into the circular driveway. "And don't mention Rick's golf game. He's been in a mood about it." Michael nodded, adjusting his watch, the only luxury he allowed himself, a reminder of his first major software sale. "Anything else I should avoid?" Lainey paused, lipstick halfway to her mouth. "Just be more present this time? Mom thinks you don't like them." "I'm always present," he replied, watching a muscle in his jaw flex in the rearview mirror. "You know what I mean. Engage. Talk. Don't just sit there analyzing everyone. But that's exactly what I'll be doing, he thought. The door swung open before they reached it. Francine stood there, hair indeed freshly highlighted, martini glass already in hand despite the morning hour. There's my beautiful girl. She embraced Lainey, ignoring Michael until the last possible moment. And Michael, still working at that computer place? Systems engineering firm, yes. He accepted her air kiss, catching the scent of expensive perfume and vodka. Inside, Jenna lounged across a white sofa, scrolling through her phone. At 29, she'd never held a job for more than 6 months, but somehow maintained an Instagram lifestyle of luxury vacations and designer clothes funded, Michael knew, by her stepfather's guilt money. Hey, big sis. Robot man. She barely looked up. Rick emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of Bloody Marys, his ex-military posture at odds with his weekend polo and boat shoes. Michael, how's the 9 to 5 treating you? He set down the drinks, still punching that clock for the man. Michael accepted a glass. Business is good. We just secured the healthcare network contract for. That reminds me, Francine interrupted. Lainey, you must tell Michael about Dr. Saunders' offer. He's looking for someone to revamp his office systems. It doesn't really align with what Michael does, Mom, Lainey said, but the money would be good, wouldn't it? Francine persisted. A little side hustle? Every little bit helps, especially with Lainey's studio expansion plans. Michael took a careful sip. This was the first he'd heard of any expansion plans. Brunch progressed predictably. Rick dominated conversation with stories about his sales territory. Jenna dropped names of celebrities she'd supposedly encountered. Francine topped off everyone's drinks while making pointed comments about their neighbor's recent financial troubles. So, Michael, Rick said as they moved to the dining room, Lainey tells us you're quite the saver. Smart man, but you gotta live a little too, right? Before Michael could respond, Lainey laughed. Oh, please, I have to practically beg him to spend anything. He's just a pushover when it comes to me. Remember that trip you wanted to take to Paris? Jenna chimed in. Did he ever cave on that? Not yet, but I'm working on him. Actually, Lainey reached for her Bloody Mary. I had to raid his savings to pay off my credit card again last month. The table erupted in laughter. Francine smirked over her glass. He won't do anything about it. More laughter. Michael felt their eyes on him, waiting for his reaction: embarrassment, anger, or the nervous laugh of a man controlled. Instead, he offered a small, polite smile and cut another piece of frittata. Excuse me, he said, standing. Where's the restroom again? In the pristine guest bathroom. Michael splashed cold water on his face, watching his reflection. His father would have flipped the table, made a scene. That was never Michael's way. But the weight of years of these subtle humiliations pressed down on him now. Just a pushover comment. Every financial violation presented as a joke. Every knowing smurf from Francine. His phone buzzed a work emergency he'd secretly arranged earlier that morning. I have to go, he announced, returning to the dining room. Server issue at work. Lainey's face fell. On a Sunday? Can't someone else handle it? I'm the lead on this project. I need to go in. He wasn't lying. He was the lead on many projects, just not the one requiring attention today. That's our Michael. Rick raised his glass. Duty calls when you're climbing the ladder. The condescension wasn't lost on Michael. He kissed Lainey goodbye, nodded to the others, and left. Instead of driving to his office, he headed to the bank. There, in the privacy of a consultation room, he spent 2 hours reorganizing his finances. By the time he left, his plan had begun to take shape. When Lainey came home that evening, slightly drunk and carrying leftovers, Michael was gone. The extended-stay apartment complex sat 15 miles from their home, near enough to his office, but in a direction Lainey never traveled. Michael signed a lease under Michael Mercer, dropping his middle name that everyone used. Simple but effective. The apartment was sparse kitchen basics, a bed, a desk for his laptop. He'd packed methodically, clothes for 2 weeks, toiletries, essential documents, and his external hard drives. Now, sitting on the edge of the bed, he opened his laptop and created a new folder, Exit. The next morning, he visited a bank across town where he'd established an account years ago. Inside a safe deposit box waited a folder: documents, photos, passwords, and sealed envelopes. His insurance policy, created 2 years into the marriage when patterns became clear. "You're looking well, Mr. Mercer," said Ms. Patel, the bank manager. "It's been, what, almost a year?" 14 months, he corrected, forcing a smile. "Time flies." In the private viewing room, he spread the contents across the table. Financial records showing the gradual depletion of their joint savings. Email printouts of Lainey dismissing his concerns about spending. Screenshots of text messages to her friends mocking his frugality. All dated, organized, annotated with his precise handwriting. He added new documents. Bank statement from the last year, credit card bills, a journal logging financial and emotional incidents. The evidence mounted, not in angry scrawls, but in the methodical documentation of a systems analyst tracking a malfunction. His phone remained off. By now, Lainey would have noticed his absence, tried calling, perhaps even checked with coworkers. He wasn't ready for that confrontation. Not yet. Instead, Michael closed his eyes and let the memories surface. 16-year-old Michael hunched over circuit boards in the garage, the door locked from inside. His father's voice boomed through the house, followed by the sound of shattering glass. His mother's quiet weeping. Later, she slipped into the garage. "He's asleep now," she whispered, her eye already darkening with a bruise. "What are you building?" "A motion detector," he explained, showing her the crude but functional device. "It'll warn us when he's coming." She stroked his hair. "You're so smart, Mickey. So quiet, but so smart." "I'm going to get us out," he promised. "One day." She kissed his forehead. "Don't make waves, Mickey. Just endure. That's how we survive." Michael opened his eyes, the memory fading. He had gotten her out eventually, into a small apartment where she lived her final years in peace. Too late to undo the damage, but soon enough for her to know safety that he would not make the same mistake twice. Opening his laptop, he created a new email account and drafted a message to the human resources department of his company, explaining a temporary personal situation requiring changed contact information and direct deposit arrangements. Professional, brief, no details that might generate gossip. Next, he researched divorce attorneys, making a short list based on reviews emphasizing discretion and experience with financial cases. Finally, he allowed himself to check his personal email. 27 messages from Lainey, escalating from confusion to anger to concern. 3 voicemails, which he didn't play. He needed clarity, not the emotional manipulation her voice would bring. Michael closed the computer and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The quiet felt unfamiliar after years of Lainey's constant presence, her music, her phone calls, her demands for attention. He had forgotten what silence felt like. Tomorrow, he would begin phase 2. Tonight, he allowed himself to feel the full force of his anger, not in shouts or broken dishes like his father, but in the cold, focused determination of a man who had finally recognized his worth. Lainey Mercer stood in the walk-in closet, staring at the empty spaces where Michael's clothes had hung. His dresser drawers sat half open, cleared of contents. In the bathroom, his toothbrush, razor, and cologne were gone. 3 days had passed since she'd returned from her mother's to find the house unnervingly quiet. At first, she'd assumed he was working late. Then, that he was punishing her with silence. Now, faced with the evidence of his deliberate departure, a new emotion crept in: uncertainty. Her phone chimed with a text from her friend Courtney. "Any word from the missing husband?" Lainey typed back. "Nothing. I think he's having some kind of breakdown." She tried Michael's number again. Straight to voicemail. His work phone the same. She'd already called his office yesterday, only to be told by a coolly professional receptionist that Mr. Mercer has requested privacy regarding his personal matters. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, scrolling through her contacts for her mother's number. "He's just throwing a tantrum," Francine declared after Lainey explained. "Men do this sometimes when they feel their control slipping. Your father once disappeared for a weekend after I redecorated his study. It's been 3 days, Mom. He'll be back when he runs out of clean underwear." Francine laughed. "In the meantime, maybe check the bank accounts. Make sure he hasn't done anything stupid." Lainey hadn't thought of that. After ending the call, she opened their banking app. Her stomach dropped. Access denied. "This user has been removed from the account." She tried their joint savings account. Access denied. Panic rising, she tried the credit card app. This card has been reported lost and deactivated. If this is an error, please contact customer service. Hands shaking, she called customer service. After 20 minutes and identity verification questions, she barely passed. The representative informed her that the primary account holder had removed her as an authorized user 3 days ago. That's not possible, Laney insisted. There must be a mistake. I'm sorry, ma'am. The request was processed through proper channels with all required verification. If you believe this was done fraudulently, you'll need to file a police report. Laney hung up, mind racing. Michael couldn't have done this. Quiet, reliable Michael, who never raised his voice, who patiently tolerated her family, who worked those long hours to maintain their lifestyle. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender, Michael Mercer. Laney, I have filed for temporary separation. Legal documents will arrive within 5 to 7 business days. I have withdrawn from all joint financial accounts, as is my legal right during separation proceedings. Your personal accounts remain untouched, that I have instructed my workplace not to provide you with information about my whereabouts. Please direct any necessary communication through this email address only. Michael, no explanation. No emotion. Just facts, delivered in the same careful language he used for work reports. Bastard, she whispered, fingers trembling as she tried to call him again. Voicemail. She left a message, her voice shifting from anger to tearful persuasion. Michael, please. Whatever this is about, we could talk about it. Just come home. I'm worried about you. She ended the call, doubt creeping in. Had she pushed too far with the credit card? With the comments at brunch? Michael had always been so steady, so forgiving. What had changed? The doorbell rang. Laney rushed to answer it, hoping against hope to find Michael. Instead, Tessa Brighton stood on the porch, concern on her face. Hey, I got your texts. What's going on? Laney pulled her inside. Michael's gone. He's emptied the accounts, cut off my credit cards. He's filed for separation. Tessa's eyes widened appropriately, though something fleeting crossed her expression. Wow, that doesn't sound like Michael at all. What happened? As Laney recounted the past few days, leaving out certain details about the brunch conversation, Tessa listened with a sympathy that seemed genuine. You know what? Tessa said finally. I think Caroline mentioned seeing him at that coffee shop near the office yesterday. Want me to ask around? Yes. Anything. I just need to talk to him. After Tessa left with promises to help, Laney sat down at the computer to check their bill payment accounts. The mortgage was current, but set to auto-pay from an account she couldn't access. The utilities were the same. Her phone rang the yoga studio. Laney, the booking system is completely down, her assistant manager reported. The website too. I've been trying the IT support number you gave us, but no one's answering. Michael, of course. He'd set up all their systems, maintain their website, fix problems remotely when they arose. Keep trying, she instructed, a headache forming behind her eyes. And start taking paper bookings for now. By evening, more problems had surfaced. The specialized accounting software Michael had customized for the studio was locked. The social media scheduling platform showed all accounts logged out. Even the thermostat system Michael had installed responded to the app with user access revoked. When she arrived at the studio the next morning, a small group of confused clients stood outside the locked doors. The electronic entry system displayed, "Service interrupted." I'm so sorry. Laney apologized, using her emergency key. Technical difficulties. Inside, the phone rang constantly. Without the booking system, classes overlapped. Instructors arrived for sessions that had been canceled. Regular clients complained about confirmations sent, then withdrawn. Weeks end. The studio operated in chaos. Paper systems failed to replace the elegant digital architecture Michael had built. Clients drifted away, irritated by double bookings and missed appointments. Laney sat in the empty studio after closing, calculating losses. Without Michael's technical support, without access to their joint accounts, without even her credit cards, the financial cushion she'd taken for granted evaporated. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Rick's attorney friend says Michael can't legally cut you off completely. Call him tomorrow. Lainey stared at the message, a strange realization dawning. For the first time since their marriage, she felt afraid not of Michael, but of her future without him. Without his steady income, without his technical expertise, without his quiet, consistent presence supporting her dreams, she hadn't known he could leave. Hadn't thought he would. Looking around the studio, her pride and joy now limping along on paper bookings and cash payments, she whispered to the empty room, "What have I done?" Michael checked his watch as he entered the restaurant exactly noon. Bryce Ketterling already occupied a corner table, legal pad and pen precisely aligned beside his water glass. Some habits never changed. Right on time, Bryce stood extending his hand, still punctual as atomic clockwork. "Some things stay consistent," Michael replied, taking the seat with his back to the wall. Another habit, developed in childhood to watch for his father's approach. They ordered quickly. Bryce knew what he wanted without looking at the menu. Another trait Michael appreciated. Efficiency. "So," Bryce leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Your email was intriguing, but light on details. Legal consultation regarding marital dissolution with financial components. Care to elaborate?" Michael looked at his old college friend. They'd roomed together junior and senior year, both quiet, serious students while their peers partied through semesters. Both betrayed by the same woman, though at different times. "I've left Lainey," Michael stated simply. "I need a strategy for a clean, permanent separation that protects my assets." Bryce's eyebrows rose slightly. "I won't say I'm shocked, but knowing you, this isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. 5 years in observation, 2 in planning, 3 days in execution." A small smile crossed Bryce's face. "And here Lainey always said you were bad at surprises." He picked up his pen. "Tell me everything, starting with your current financial situation." For the next hour, Michael outlined his strategy. So far, the separate accounts established years ago, the documentation of financial transfers, the methodical withdrawal from joint holdings, and the evidence collected of emotional manipulation. Bryce took notes in his precise handwriting. The temporary separation filing was smart. Gives us time to position everything correctly. He tapped his pen against the pad. "But Lainey won't go quietly. You know that, right? I'm counting on it. She'll claim you abandoned her. She'll cry to judges about her destroyed credit rating. She'll play victim." Michael nodded. "I have documentation of every unauthorized transfer she made from our accounts. Every dismissive comment about my concerns. Every time she used joint funds for personal luxuries while complaining about my modest expenses." "Good. But it's not just about evidence. It's about narrative." Bryce set down his pen. "Judges are human. They respond to stories. Right now, the surface story is successful husband suddenly abandons yoga teacher wife. We need to reshape that." "How?" "First, by establishing a pattern of financial abuse on her part. Second, by documenting emotional manipulation. Third, by demonstrating that you attempted to address these issues before taking drastic action." Michael frowned. "The third part is problematic. I didn't confront her directly." "Why not?" The question hung between them. Michael stared at his water glass, calculating his response. "My father was confrontational," he said finally. "Loud, violent. I swore I'd never be that man." Understanding dawned in Bryce's eyes. "So, you went the opposite direction. Silent endurance. Until now. We can work with this." Bryce made another note. "Actually, it might strengthen our case. You endured until it became damaging to your mental health. Then you removed yourself from a toxic situation in a responsible way. You maintained financial responsibility for household obligations. You didn't create a scene." Michael nodded slowly. But Bryce continued, "We need someone who can speak to the psychological impact of the situation. A professional opinion would carry weight. I'm not comfortable with therapy. Not therapy. A consultation. An expert who can review the evidence and provide an assessment." Bryce pulled out his phone. "I know someone. Dr. Margot Klein. Specializes in relationship dynamics, particularly emotional abuse patterns. She testifies in complex divorce cases." Michael hesitated. "Trust me," Bryce said, "Lainey will bring emotional manipulation to the table. We need to be prepared." After lunch, Michael sat across from Dr. Klein in her office, surrounded by bookshelves and soft lighting. Unlike the aggressively cheerful therapist Lainey had once insisted they see, Dr. Klein projected calm competence. Mr. Ketterling explained your situation in broad terms. She said, notebook open, but pen not yet moving. Before we begin, I want to clarify my role. I'm not here as your therapist. I'm here to assess the dynamic you've described and, if appropriate, provide expert testimony. Michael appreciated her directness. Understood. Good. Now, tell me about your marriage. Start with patterns, not incidents. For the next hour, Michael described life with Lainey. The early years when her spontaneity seemed refreshing against his structured nature. The gradual shift as financial decisions became one-sided. The subtle comments undermining his confidence. The growing isolation from his few, close friends. The performance of their relationship for her family and social circle. Dr. Klein took notes, occasionally asking for clarification, but never expressing judgment. When he finished, she set down her pen. What you're describing fits established patterns of what we call financial and emotional abuse. It's less recognized when directed at men, but the dynamics are similar. She closed her notebook. I'd like to review the documentation you've collected. With your permission, I'll also prepare an assessment that may be used in legal proceedings. Will help, Michael asked, the question simpler than he'd intended. Dr. Klein regarded him steadily. In court? Possibly. In your understanding of what happened to you? Definitely. She leaned forward slightly. Mr. Mercer, from what you've described, you've been systematically manipulated to believe your needs don't matter. That your role is to provide without expectation of respect or reciprocity. That's not a marriage. That's exploitation. Something tight in Michael's chest loosened slightly. Hearing it named exploitation and abuse validated the anger he'd contained for years. There's something else I'd like you to consider, Dr. Klein continued. Your strategy of documenting and methodically separating yourself shows remarkable self-protection skills. But going forward, you might benefit from learning to recognize these patterns earlier, to establish boundaries before reaching breaking point. Michael nodded. One step at a time, Doctor. First, I need to be free. Later, walking to his car, Michael's phone vibrated with a text from Tessa Brighton. Had coffee with Lainey today. She's freaking out about the studio. Keeps saying she can't believe you'd sabotage her dream. I acted sympathetic, but thought you should know. He typed back. Thank you. Any mention of legal action. Her mom is pushing her to file something. Rick knows an attorney, but she's worried about what you might reveal if pushed. Interesting. So Lainey sensed he had evidence, though she couldn't know how much. Fear would make her cautious, at least temporarily. Another text arrived, this one from Bryce. Klein called. You made an impression. She's on board. Meeting tomorrow to discuss trust options for your assets. Michael slid into his car, closed the door, and for the first time in days, allowed himself a small smile. Not of happiness, he was far from that, but of recognition. The systems he'd built, the plans he'd laid, the protections he'd established. They were working. His father had controlled through force. Michael controlled through strategy. Michael sat in the coffee shop near his office, laptop open to lines of code that would seem incomprehensible to casual observers. Tessa Brighton slid into the chair across from him, setting down 2 cups. Black coffee, no sugar, extra shot, she announced, pushing one toward him. You remembered, Michael said, closing his laptop. Something stick. Tessa stirred her own complicated concoction. Like how you drink coffee like it's medicine, not pleasure. Michael allowed a small smile. Efficiency. God, you haven't changed. She studied him. Well, maybe a little. There's something different about you now. More direct. Present, she decided. Like you're actually here, not half lost in that brain of yours. She leaned forward. So, how much of this master plan are you going to tell me? As much as you need to know to help. Michael took a sip of coffee. And to protect yourself from Lainey's inevitable questions. Tessa had been the odd connector in their social circuit, for years friends with both Michael and Lainey before they met, though closer to Michael through shared computer science classes. She'd maintained a friendship with Lainey even as others from their college days drifted away, unimpressed by Lainey's increasingly status-conscious behavior. She's been calling me daily, Tessa confirmed. Mostly to complain about the studio falling apart without your tech support. Some really choice comments about your passive-aggressive revenge tactics. I simply removed access to systems I personally developed and maintained. Nothing aggressive about it. Tell that to the yoga moms getting double booked for hot yoga. Tessa grinned. But seriously, what do you need from me? I'm assuming this coffee isn't just to catch up. Michael set down his cup. Information. Specifically, what Lainey's saying about me. Who she's consulting. What she's planning. Spy work. Tessa nodded. I could do that. But why? You're already 10 steps ahead. Because I need to anticipate her next move. Lainey's not strategic, but she's instinctively manipulative. And her mother is calculating. Tessa considered this. Fair enough. What else? Occasional misinformation. Nothing malicious. Just enough to keep her off balance. Such as, let it slip that I've been talking to a mutual friend who works at the bank. Suggest I might have mentioned concerns about unusual account activities months ago. Understanding dawned in Tessa's eyes, creating doubt about who else might know what she did. Clever. She took a long sip of her coffee. You know, I wanted to see Lainey get a reality check for years. The way she talks about you when you're not around, tell me. Tessa hesitated. You sure? It's not pretty. I need to know everything. Okay. Tessa set down her cup. She calls you her ATM with anxiety. Jokes about how she can always get what she wants if she just waits until you're too tired to argue. Brags about hiding purchases until you've forgotten to check the statements. She paused. Last Christmas party, she and Courtney were laughing about how you thought the yoga retreat was $900 when it was actually $2,700. Michael showed no reaction, but inside, each revelation hardened his resolve. Speaking of Courtney, has Lainey been messaging with her about this situation? Constantly. Wanting to see if I can get copies. That would be helpful. Tessa studied him. You know, most guys would be falling apart right now. Or raging. Making scenes. That's not who I am. No, she agreed. You're the guy who builds systems. Who sees patterns. Who plans. She finished her coffee. It's why I always thought Lainey was lucky to have you, even when she didn't deserve you. The next day, Michael received a text from Tessa with screenshots of a conversation between Lainey and Courtney. The exchange made his stomach tighten despite his preparation. Lainey, he's completely ghosted me. Cut off everything. The studio's a disaster without the booking system. Courtney, can't you just hire an IT person to fix it? Lainey, with what money? He's drained the accounts. Courtney, what about your private account? The one you said he didn't know about? Lainey, that was for emergencies. And shopping. Not enough to save the studio. Courtney, this is so not the Michael we know. Mr. Reliable. Mr. Never makes a scene. Lainey, I know. Maybe he had a breakdown. Mom thinks he might be having an affair. Courtney, with who? The man works and comes home. When would he have time? Lainey, there's that new project manager. Rebecca something. Courtney, please. He barely notices other women exist. That's why you got away with so much. Remember Vegas? Lainey, don't remind me. Court, what am I going to do? Mom's lawyer friend says I need to file something formal to protect myself. Courtney, from what? Michael's not the threatening type. Lainey, no, but what if he's tracking everything? What if he has, evidence of stuff? Courtney, like what? The shopping? The Craig incident? Lainey, all of it. You know how detail-oriented he is. Courtney, girl, you bled him dry. Next time, marry rich and dumb. The last line burned brightest. Michael forwarded the screenshots to Bryce with a brief message. Add to the file. Bryce responded minutes later. Perfect. Establishes intent and pattern. Tessa willing to provide statement if needed? She is. That evening, Michael met with Bryce at his office to review the trust documents. The legal structure was elegant in its simplicity. A revocable trust established months ago, quietly funded with Michael's separate assets, including royalties from his security software patent money Lainey never knew existed. The house transfer is the trickiest part, Bryce explained, pointing to the document, since it was purchased during the marriage. But we've documented that your separate funds provided the down payment and that you've made all payments from your primary income. Will it hold up? Minnesota isn't a community property state. It's equitable distribution. Given the documentation we have of Lainey's financial behavior, plus her own admissions in these texts, we have a strong case for an uneven distribution in your favor. Michael nodded, reviewing the papers. And the timing? I've prepared everything. We can file as soon as you give the word. Bryce hesitated. There's one more thing. Your father's property in Wisconsin. You've never mentioned it to Lainey. No, I inherited it after we were married, but I never told her. Too many difficult memories. Michael hadn't visited the small lakeside cabin since his father's death 3 years ago. The insurance money paid the taxes and minimal upkeep. Good. It's included in the trust, but separated from the primary assets. Less visible. As Michael drove back to his temporary apartment, he felt the pieces aligning. Financial protection in place. Legal strategy established. Evidence mounting. The system he'd built to extract himself was working with the precision of well-written code. His phone buzzed with another text from Tessa. Heads up. Lainey called me crying tonight. Says she's going to your office tomorrow to make a scene, if necessary. Wants to force you to talk to her. Michael texted back. Thank you for the warning that he'd anticipated this move. Lainey's preferred tactic when reason failed. Public drama, tears, appeals to sympathy. It had worked on him once. Not anymore that he made a quick call to his office's security team, explaining that his estranged wife might attempt to create a disturbance. Then he emailed his team, rescheduling tomorrow's in-person meetings to video conferences he could attend remotely. 5 days had passed since he'd left. 5 days of methodical preparation. Tomorrow would begin the next phase, the confrontation he'd prepared for but never sought. Not with anger like his father, but with evidence. Not with force, but with truth. Michael closed his eyes, visualizing the steps ahead like lines of code executing in sequence. Each action leading to a predictable reaction. Each reaction triggering his next prepared response. The system was ready. He was ready. The yoga studio bustled with mid-morning activity. Through the glass front, Michael could see Lainey moving through the reception area, chatting with clients, her smile professional and warm, the public face she cultivated so carefully. 7 days had passed since he'd left. Time enough for her to adjust to his absence, but not enough to rebuild what his departure had dismantled. He checked his watch. 10:15 a.m. The Thursday morning rush between classes. Maximum visibility. Beside him, Paula Reinhardt from Bryce's office adjusted her blazer. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed this way, Mr. Mercer? We could serve these at her residence. I'm certain, Michael replied, his voice steady. This needs witnesses. They entered together, Michael holding the door for the attorney. Conversations stilled as he walked in. A client he recognized from dinner parties stared openly. Another quickly texted something on her phone. Lainey looked up from the reception desk, her smile freezing when she saw him. Michael. Confusion, relief, and wariness battled across her face. What are you? Mrs. Mercer. Paula stepped forward, professional and detached. I'm Paula Reinhardt, representing Michael Mercer in divorce proceedings. I'm here to formally serve you with these documents. The studio went silent. Lainey's face drained of color as Paula placed a thick envelope on the counter. What is this? Lainey's voice trembled. Michael, what are you doing? Michael maintained eye contact, but didn't move closer. Exactly what it appears to be. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of emotional and financial abuse. Abuse. Lainey's voice rose, eyes darting to the clients who had stopped pretending not to listen. That's ridiculous. If anyone's being abusive, it's you disappearing, cutting off the accounts, sabotaging my business. Paula cleared her throat. Mrs. Mercer, I suggest you review these documents with your own counsel before making further statements. They include substantial documentation of the claims being made. Lainey snatched the envelope, tearing it open. Her hands shook as she pulled out the first page of formal divorce petition. Behind it, a thick sheaf of papers, bank statements with highlighted transfers, annotated credit card bills, printed text messages. What is all this? She whispered, eyes widening as she recognized her own words in the messages. Evidence, Michael said simply. Everything is there, the unauthorized transfers from our joint accounts, the hidden credit card charges, the conversations with your friends about how you bled me dry. A woman near the water cooler gasped audibly. You! You spied on me. Laney's shock transformed to anger. You hacked my phone. I did nothing illegal. Your friend Courtney accidentally sent me messages meant for you. Michael kept his voice level. Your privacy wasn't violated. Your deception was exposed. Laney's gaze darted around the studio, noting the shocked expressions, the uncomfortable shuffling of clients edging toward the door. Her carefully curated image, the successful, enlightened yoga instructor with a perfect supportive husband, crumbled visibly. We should discuss this privately, she hissed. I agree. With our respective attorneys present. Michael nodded to Paula. The petition requests temporary orders regarding the house and remaining joint property. Your attorney can contact Ms. Reinhardt to arrange mediation. You can't just serve me divorce papers in front of my clients and walk away. Laney's voice rose again, tears forming. The calculated shift to victim mode, a tactic Michael had witnessed countless times. You're right, he agreed, surprising her. I should clarify something first. He turned slightly, aware of the audience, but focused entirely on Laney. I stayed silent for years while you depleted our savings, mocked me to your friends and family, and treated me as nothing more than financial support for your lifestyle. I will not stay silent anymore. Laney's tears stopped abruptly, anger replacing them. You think anyone will believe this? That I abused poor, passive Michael? Everyone knows how pathetic you are. The words hung in the air, damning in their cruelty. A client near the door quickly exited. Another began recording discreetly on her phone. Thank you for that demonstration, Paula said smoothly. Now, as I said, please review these with your counsel. The court date is noted on page 1. They turned to leave. Laney rushed around the counter, grabbing Michael's arm. You can't do this to me, she said, voice lower now, intimate. Whatever I did, we can work it out. You know I love you. You know this isn't me. Michael looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. But it is you, Laney. This is exactly who you are. I just finally see it clearly. He gently removed her hand. Everything else goes through the attorneys now. Outside, Paula looked at him with newfound respect. That was remarkably controlled, Mr. Mercer. Systems work best when emotions don't interfere, he replied, though his heart pounded in his chest. What's next? We wait. She'll hire an attorney. They'll review the petition and evidence. They'll almost certainly try to claim you've damaged her business by withdrawing technical support. I've documented every system I built for her, with development dates showing they were created on my personal time, using my resources. I have emails where she acknowledges they were gifts, not business arrangements. Paula smiled slightly. Mr. Ketterling said you were thorough. I'm beginning to understand what he meant. By evening, the incident at the yoga studio had spread through social media. Michael, having anticipated this, stayed in his apartment, phone off except for scheduled check-ins with Bryce and Tessa. Tessa called at the agreed time. Well, you certainly caused a stir, she opened without preamble. Laney's been on the phone for hours. Her mother arrived with Rick about an hour ago. There was shouting. How bad is the blowback? Michael asked, preparing for worst-case scenarios. That's the thing, Tessa said, a note of surprise in her voice. It's not going how Laney expected. 3 clients called me asking if I knew about what Laney did to Michael. Apparently, her reaction in the studio didn't play well. Too defensive, too aggressive. And someone definitely posted a video. And her family, Francine, is in damage control mode. Rick made some calls to friends at the country club, trying to contain the story. Jenna is oddly quiet. I think she's worried about how this affects her social standing by association. Michael absorbed this information, updating his mental model of the situation. And Laney, cycling between rage and panic. She's already called 3 attorneys. The first 2 weren't available immediately. She's meeting the 3rd tomorrow morning. After ending the call, Michael opened his laptop and checked the special email account he'd created for divorce communications. There was a message from an unfamiliar address. Michael, I don't know what game you're playing, but you've made a serious mistake. You've humiliated me in front of my clients and friends. Whatever financial issues we had could have been resolved privately. You will regret this public spectacle. I've retained counsel and will be fighting your ridiculous abuse claims. Everyone knows you're the cold, emotionless one in this marriage. This isn't over. Laney Michael forwarded the email to Bryce with a brief note. First response. Threatening tone noted. Bryce replied almost immediately. Perfect. Keep all communications. Don't respond without consulting me first. Michael closed the laptop and walked to the window of his apartment, looking out at the Minneapolis skyline. The confrontation had gone exactly as planned. Laney's mask slipping in public, her true nature revealed not through his accusations, but through her own reaction. His phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Klein. Heard about today. Remember what we discussed about emotional backlash? Take care of yourself tonight. That he appreciated the reminder. The adrenaline that had carried him through the day was fading, leaving a hollow feeling in its wake. Not regret, he was certain of his course, but the echo of old pain. His father's voice, never show weakness, never back down. Power is everything. Michael turned from the window, made himself a simple dinner, and ate methodically while reviewing next steps in his plan. The public revelation was complete. The legal process initiated. The evidence presented. Phase 3 would begin tomorrow. The conference room in Bryce's law office gleamed with polished wood and understated wealth. Michael sat on one side of the table, Bryce beside him, documents arranged in precise stacks before them. Across sat Laney with her attorney, Martin Greaves, a silver-haired man known for representing country club divorces with minimal fuss and maximum discretion. 10 days since Michael had served the divorce papers. 10 days of escalating legal threats from Laney's side, culminating in today's emergency mediation session requested by Greaves after receiving full copies of Michael's evidence file. Thank you all for agreeing to this meeting. Greaves began, his tone suggesting he was doing everyone a favor. I believe we can resolve this matter efficiently if we approach it reasonably. Bryce smiled blandly. We're always open to reasonable approaches. Laney hadn't looked directly at Michael since entering. She wore a conservative dress, her courtroom outfit. He recognized and kept her expression neutral, coached no doubt by Greaves on appearing rational and wounded. My client acknowledges there may have been some financial misunderstandings in the marriage, Greaves continued. However, we categorically reject the characterization of abuse. Mrs. Mercer was operating under the good faith assumption that their finances were shared. Interesting interpretation, Bryce replied, opening a folder. Would good faith include telling friends that she, quote, bled him dry, unquote, or perhaps describing her husband as an ATM with anxiety? Laney flinched. Greaves placed a calming hand on her arm. Comments made in private between friends can be easily misinterpreted when taken out of context, he countered. Regardless, we're prepared to discuss a fair division of assets, including the marital home and Mrs. Mercer's business, which has suffered considerable damage due to Mr. Mercer's deliberate technological sabotage. Michael kept his face impassive, but inside, a cold satisfaction spread. They'd taken the bait. Bryce glanced at Michael, who nodded slightly. Actually, Bryce said, sliding a document across the table, we should clarify the asset situation before proceeding further. Greaves picked up the paper, scanning it with growing confusion. What is this? A trust agreement. The Michael Mercer Living Trust, established 18 months ago. If you'll turn to page 3, you'll see a complete inventory of assets transferred into the trust prior to any separation or divorce filing. Laney leaned over, reading alongside her attorney. Her face paled. This can't be legal, she blurted. He can't just hide all our assets in a trust. Not our assets, Mrs. Mercer, Bryce corrected gently. Mr. Mercer's separate property legally transferred into a revocable trust, which is his right under Minnesota law. The trust contains his premarital assets, inheritance, and intellectual property earnings. Greaves frowned, flipping pages. The marital home is listed here. That's clearly a joint asset purchased during marriage. Purchased primarily with funds from Mr. Mercer's separate accounts, with all mortgage payments made from his income, as documented in Appendix B. Bryce slid another folder across. We've prepared a complete financial history demonstrating that Mrs. Mercer contributed negligibly to major assets while simultaneously depleting joint resources. This is ridiculous. Lainey snapped, color returning to her cheeks. We both know Michael didn't have significant assets before we married. He was just a mid-level programmer. Michael spoke for the first time, his voice even. You never asked about my finances, Lainey. You assumed. Just as you assumed I didn't notice the missing money, or the credit card charges, or the comments to your friends. What significant assets are we discussing here? Greaves asked. Professional interest piqued despite himself. Bryce produced another document. Mr. Mercer developed a specialized security protocol during his graduate studies. He sold the patent 3 years before meeting Mrs. Mercer, with a structured royalty agreement that continues to generate substantial income. That income was never commingled with joint accounts. Lainey stared at Michael, shock and betrayal on her face. You had a patent? All this time? While I was stressing about studio expenses and household budgets. You were never stressing about household budgets, Michael replied calmly. You were overspending them and taking from my savings to cover the difference. The budget I created would have been more than adequate if followed. So what is this? Lainey demanded, gesturing at the trust document. Some kind of punishment? Financial revenge? No, Michael said. It's protection. The same protection I should have established years ago. Greaves, recovering his composure, gathered the documents. We'll need time to review these materials and consult with financial experts. In the meantime, my client requires interim support while this matter is resolved. That brings us to our counterproposal, Bryce responded, producing a final document. Mr. Mercer is prepared to offer a one-time settlement reflecting Mrs. Mercer's legitimate contributions to the marriage. In exchange, we require full resolution of all claims, including those related to the yoga studio technologies. The figure on the settlement offer was deliberately calibrated substantial enough to appear generous to outside observers, modest enough to sting Lainey, who now understood what Michael actually possessed. This is insultingly low, Lainey began, but Greaves quieted her with a look. We'll review the proposal, he said diplomatically. Now, regarding the technological systems at Mrs. Mercer's business. Those systems were personal projects Mr. Mercer developed and gifted to the studio, Bryce interrupted. As documented in these emails, he slid another folder across, where Mrs. Mercer explicitly acknowledges them as personal favors, not business arrangements. Mr. Mercer retains full intellectual property rights. Lainey's composure cracked. So, what? I just lose my booking system forever? My client records? Years of business data? Not necessarily, Michael said. The data can be extracted and transferred to new systems. For a consulting fee, payable in advance to a third-party IT service, I'd be happy to recommend. The meeting continued for another hour. Greaves professionally masking his growing realization that his client's position was weaker than anticipated, Lainey alternating between cold anger and calculated appeal to Michael's better nature. When they finally departed Greaves, promising to consider the trust implications and respond formally, Michael remained seated, hands folded on the table. Bryce closed the door behind them and turned to Michael with a slight smile. That went exactly as you predicted. People follow patterns, Michael replied. Lainey's always been consistent, first anger, then manipulation, then strategic retreat. The trust was the masterstroke, Bryce said, gathering their materials. Completely legal, ethically questionable, brilliantly executed. What did you first decide to create it? Michael thought back. After the second time, she emptied the joint savings without discussion. I realized 2 things. She would never change, and I would never confront her directly. Why not? Why not just have it out with her years ago? Because I needed to be nothing like my father. Michael stood, straightening his tie. He would have raged, threatened, controlled through fear. I chose a different path. Well, your path led to quite a victory. She'll take the settlement offer. Greaves knows it's that or a protracted battle they'll lose. Bryce glanced at his watch. The papers should hit the court clerk's office by end of day. How does it feel? Michael considered the question carefully. Not like happiness. More like verification, a system designed, tested, and functioning as intended. That evening, Michael ate dinner alone in his apartment, checking emails methodically. As expected, a message from Greaves arrived, formally requesting 48 hours to review settlement terms while hinting at acceptance. Tessa reported that Lainey had returned to her mother's house. The studio remained closed for a short sabbatical, and Rick had been overheard at his golf club complaining about younger men with no respect for marriage. Just after midnight, a final email arrived from Lainey's personal account, sent after what Michael suspected involved several glasses of wine. I don't understand. All these years, you had money, real money, and you let me struggle with studio finances? Let me worry about every expense? Made me feel guilty about every purchase? You're the fraud, Michael. Not me. I was just trying to build something of my own while you secretly judged me, collected evidence against me, planned to destroy me. Who does that? I loved you. Maybe I took advantage sometimes. Maybe I said things I shouldn't have. But I never plotted against you for years like some calculating robot. You want to know the really sick part? I still don't believe you're capable of this on your own. Someone put you up to this. Bryce? Tessa? They always hated me, that you'll regret this when you're alone with your money and your precious control. No one will ever love you like I did. Michael read the message twice, recognizing every deflection tactic, every attempt to reframe herself as victim, every manipulation that had once worked on him. But the words that caught his attention were, "No one will ever love you like I did." And she was right, though not in the way she intended. No one would ever love him with that particular blend of entitlement, calculation, and occasional genuine affection that had characterized their relationship. He closed the email without responding and went to bed, sleeping more soundly than he had in years. 3 weeks later, Michael stood by the small lake on his father's property in Wisconsin. The water reflected the cloudy sky, gray and still. He hadn't visited in over 5 years, avoiding the memories saturated in the weather cabin behind him. The final divorce decree had been signed yesterday. Lainey had ultimately accepted the settlement, her legal options exhausted by the ironclad trust and overwhelming evidence. Her counterclaims of emotional abandonment gained no traction against the documented financial and psychological abuse that she'd made one last attempt at public redemption, a tearful interview with a local lifestyle blogger portraying herself as blindsided by a calculating husband. The story collapsed when the blogger received anonymous copies of Lainey's text messages about bleeding him dry. The source remained unnamed, though Michael suspected Tessa's involvement. His phone vibrated in his pocket. "Bryce, it's done," his friend and attorney said without preamble. "Funds transferred, releases signed, records sealed as requested. You are officially unmarried." "Thank you," Michael replied, watching a fish break the lake's surface. "Any last-minute complications?" "None. She tried to include a non-disclosure clause preventing you from discussing the marriage with mutual friends. I declined on your behalf." Bryce paused. "Was that correct?" "Yes. I have no intention of discussing it, but I won't be legally silenced." "Didn't think so." Another pause. "What now, Michael? Back to the old apartment? New place? You mentioned possibly relocating." Michael turned to look at the cabin, his father's sanctuary, his mother's prison. The place where he'd learned to be invisible, to watch, to plan. "I'm not sure yet," he admitted. "I need to finish something first." After ending the call, Michael walked to the cabin porch and unlocked the door with a key he'd kept on a separate ring from his others. Inside, dust covered the sparse furniture. His father's chair still dominated the main room, positioned to oversee everything. Michael moved methodically through the space, opening windows to release the stale air. In the small bedroom, he found what he'd come for, a cardboard box of his mother's few possessions, untouched since her death 8 years ago. He carried it outside to the picnic table overlooking the lake. Inside lay photo albums, her reading glasses, a well-worn paperback novel, and an envelope addressed to him in her handwriting. He'd never had the courage to open it after finding it among her things in the nursing home. Now, he carefully broke the seal. "My dearest Mickey, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you found some peace." I need you to know something I never had the courage to tell you while I was alive. Leaving your father was the best decision I ever made, and my greatest regret is that I didn't do it sooner, that I stayed too long. Believing I could change him, believing I deserved no better, believing staying was somehow protecting you. I was wrong on all counts. You learned to be quiet from him, to watch from the shadows, to plan in silence. These aren't bad traits, Mickey. They've made you thoughtful, observant, careful. But don't let them make you distant from your own life, as I was. Whatever path you've chosen, I hope it's one where you value yourself enough to walk away from those who don't. Power isn't in controlling others as your father believed. It's in refusing to be controlled by others or by fear. All my love. Mom. Michael folded the letter carefully, returning it to its envelope. His mother had seen more clearly than he'd realized. She'd recognized the lessons he'd absorbed from his father, both the destructive ones he'd rejected and the quieter ones that shaped his nature. He pulled out his phone and made a call he'd been considering for days. Bryce, it's Michael. That donation we discussed for the women's shelter? I'd like to proceed. In my mother's name, Eleanor Mercer. Consider it done, Bryce replied. Amount. Michael named a figure that would establish a permanent endowment, large enough to draw notice but not publicity. And one other thing, Michael added. I've decided to accept that consulting offer from the Seattle firm. Fresh start. Good for you, Bryce said, genuine approval in his voice. When will you tell the others? Soon. I need to close a few things here first. After ending the call, Michael sat by the lake until sunset, watching the water change colors with the sky. He thought about the system he'd built to extract himself from his marriage, the documentation, the legal protections, the strategic revelations. He'd executed it flawlessly, yet his mother's words lingered. Don't let them make you distant from your own life. Had he done that? Removed himself so completely that even his victory felt observed rather than experienced. As darkness fell, Michael returned to the cabin and built a small fire in the old stone fireplace. He opened his laptop and typed a brief email to Dr. Klein, requesting a final session before his move to Seattle that in the appointment book he always carried. He wrote 2 new entries. Call real estate agent about selling cabin. Research volunteer opportunities in Seattle. His father had taught him to gather power through control. His mother, through her letter, taught him to use that power for release. Michael closed the notebook and watched the fire. For the first time in months, perhaps years, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The betrayal, the calculated exit, the exposure of Laney's true nature to the world. Not with his father's rage or his mother's resignation, but with his own methodical determination. He hadn't smiled out of joy when the divorce finalized. That wasn't who he was. He had smiled because he had ended it with power, not pity. No forgiveness, no reconciliation, only peace earned through his own design as the fire died to embers. Michael mentally closed the folder on this chapter of his life. The evidence collected and presented. The judgment rendered. The case closed. Tomorrow, he would begin the process of selling the cabin, his final tie to his father's legacy. The proceeds would join the endowment for the shelter in his mother's name. Outside, the lake reflected the emerging stars. Inside, Michael Mercer looked toward a future he had engineered not just to escape Laney, but to finally escape the shadows of his past.